Okay, we're going back to Hilchos Pesach, and apparently we're up to Siman Tov Lamed Tes, which is page 19. Page 19, Siman Tov Lamed Tes is where we got up to last year. Okay. Okay, it's quite a difficult, complicated siman. I'm going to try and make it as simple as possible. I've worked on it to try and get it as simple as possible. I was hoping to do the whole siman in one morning, but we haven't got very long, so we're not going to manage. Probably not going to manage the whole thing. So we have to split it up. We'll do whatever we can manage. Sif Aleph. Tes Tiburin Shel Matzah. Vechot Shel Chometz. There's 9 piles of matzah, or non-chometz material. Ve'echot shel chometz, and 1 pile of chometz. Ubo achbar, and along came a mouse. Doesn't have to be a mouse, it could be a child or anything else. V'notan, and he took from one of the 10 piles. We saw him take from one of the piles. We don't know which one he took it from. We didn't see exactly which pile he took it. We don't know if he took chometz or matzah. V'nichnas lebayis boduk, and he went into a house that's already been checked. So the question is, do we have to recheck the house? We don't know if the child or the mouse brought in chometz or matzah into the house, right? So we have to check. So he has to recheck the whole house. Okay. Mihu says the Mihu imakiko cotton sheyochel ha'achbo le'achol. If it's a very small piece, and we can assume that there's a good chance that the mouse ate the chometz, then we are we rely on the fact that he did indeed eat the chometz, and he does not have to recheck the house. Okay, so only if it's a big piece that he couldn't have eaten, then we have to recheck the house. If it's small enough that he could have eaten it, then we assume that he did eat it.
But if you can't tell which of the 9 piles or 10 piles he took it from, how could you possibly know whether it's a big piece or a small piece that he took?
We saw it in his mouth.
Oh, I see.
We saw him running into the house with something in his mouth.
Okay, I thought that something was just missing in your.
We saw him running with something in his mouth.
Okay.
We saw him running with something in his mouth. It was not obvious if it was chometz or matzah. Now, the way we make matzah nowadays, it's pretty obvious if something's chometz or matzah. But it could be a chometz product or a non-chometz product. It doesn't have to literally be chometz or matzah. It could be a chometz product, non-chometz. It could be 2 piles of matzah. Right? We have chometz matzah and we have kosher Pesach matzah. So you saw him entering with a piece of matzah. You don't know if it was the chometz matzah or the Pesach matzah. Okay, but you saw the size.
But you saw him moving. Okay.
So the question is, why don't we follow this? This is quite a deep Talmudic concept here, right? Which is that there's a simple concept called roiv. Roiv means that we follow the majority. Right? It says in Torah, we always follow the majority. Right? Question is over here, why do we not follow the majority? There were 10 piles here. 9 of them are piles of matzah, of non-chometz products, and 1 of them is chometz. So why do we not follow the majority? Why am to the concept of roiv, following the majority? The answer is the next words of the Shulchan Aruch. Shekol hakavua kemechta al mechta. This is a very deep Talmudic concept called kavua. Kavua means the following: that if you have fixed sources of Isser and Heter, a fixed source of something permitted, and a fixed source of prohibited, okay? And something was taken from one of these fixed sources and we don't know which one it was taken from, in that case we treat it as an equal suffix. We treat it as half-half. Kol kavua kamechta amechta domi.
Regardless of what the percentages are.
Regardless of what the percentages are. Right, that's the concept called kavua. So deep Talmudic concept. We're not going to go into it now. In yeshivas they spend weeks on this concept. How it applies, when it exactly applies. It has many applications in halacha l'maisa. Many applications halacha l'maisa. For example, when it comes to halachas of orla, right? In Eretz Yisrael, in Chutz La'aretz, the halachas of orla are much more lenient. Right? So halacha Mishna Sinai, and we receive from Mishna Sinai that in Chutz La'aretz, even though orla is midoraisa, but But the law from Moshe, halacha Moshe Sinai says in Chutz it says more makel. We makel on sveikas. In Eretz Yisrael it's much more machmir, and a sofik we have to be machmir on oil. If we're not sure if it's oil or not, we're machmir. What if you have a roiv, a majority, then it should be okay. If it's a majority and not oil, it should be okay. However, we have this problem of kavua. If we have the trees that are oil are fixed, like we know where they are. The trees that are not oil are also fixed. We have fixed sources of prohibition and fixed sources of things that are permissible. They're fixed. We now have fruit in front of us that we're not sure if they were brought from oil trees or non-oil trees. So even if we have statistics and we know that 95% of the trees this year, let's say the apple producing trees in 2019, even if we know that 95% of them are non-oil trees and only 5% are oil trees, okay? But it could be a problem that the fruit that we have in front of us are kavua, because it was taken from fixed sources, and therefore we don't follow the majority, and it's an equal sofik, and therefore we have to be machmir. So therefore, one has to know exactly when to apply this ruling of kavua and when not. We're not going to go into all the cases when it does and when it doesn't, but I'm just raising the awareness of this issue.
I have two questions. I'm sorry. I know time is of the essence. One question is defining fixed sources something that's a long conversation? Is defining fixed sources a long conversation? Or what does it mean?
Well, in certain cases it's obvious, and in certain cases, yes, it does enter into one has to...
Okay, we'll pass that one.
So the cases we gave were obvious. Here we have the fixed piles of chometz and matzah. That's fixed, that's obvious. We know which piles are chometz, we know which ones are matzah. The second example I gave of the trees is also very fixed. Right. We know which ones are ola, we know which ones aren't ola. Okay, so in those cases it's obvious. There can be cases where it's less defined, yeah. Right.
Okay. I would think maybe with liquids it's less defined than with solids, for instance.
It depends where we took the liquids from, if it's a case if it's fixed or not fixed. Yeah.
And my second question is, what is the logic, the derivation behind this, or is it just simply Moshe Sinai?
This is learned from, I think it's learned from a pasuk. I think it's Eliezer Stahl. Okay. Okay, let's continue. V'im pirish hakikar memokom kvi'usay, v'not lo ha'achbar misham, ein tzorich lachzor v'livdok. We're on the top line of the next page. V'im pirish hakikar memokom kvi'usay, v'not lo ha'achbar misham, ein tzorich lachzor v'livdok, d'chol de porish meruba porish. If the piece of whichever piece he took, we don't know if it was chometz or matzah. If the loaf was removed, left the mokum kaviyus, it left the fixed place. Shaloi b'faneinu. It wasn't in front of us. We didn't see it leave. Okay, we didn't see it leave. Then we followed the concept of roiv.
Right.
Okay, meaning we didn't see it leave the kaviyus. We saw an achbar with a loaf in its mouth. We didn't see it take it from the piles. In this case, we do follow the majority.
I see.
Okay, this again takes a lot of defining what's called pirish b'faneinu, what's called pirish lo b'faneinu. When it's called that we saw it, when it's called we didn't see it, which we're not going to go into. Okay, fine. Okay. Let's continue. So it's base. Base tziburin. Echod shel chometz ve'echod shel matzah. Here we have two piles, one of chometz and one of matzah. Right? One of a non-Pesach source, one of a Pesach source. With base bottom, there are two houses, echod boduk ve'echod she'enoi boduk. Two houses, one has already been checked, and one has not yet been checked. Uboy shnei achborim, two mice came. One of them took chometz, and one took matzah. We don't know which entered into which house. If the chometz mouse entered into the chometz house, that's fine, because it hasn't been yet checked. He's going to check it afterwards. If it was the other way around, like the chometz mouse entered into the Pesach house, then we have a problem. So we don't know which way around it is. Does have to recheck the house or not? Okay? There's 4 cases here. Okay? I'm going to tell you what the Shulchan Aruch said. Let's read the last words of the Shulchan Aruch before we read all 4 cases. So I want to discuss each case separately. Okay? So let's read the last words of this Sif base, which is on the 5th line of the page. The last 2 words on the line, 5th line of the page, last 2 words. Ein tzorich lachzor v'livdoik. One does not have to recheck the house. That's the Shulchan Aruch. One does not need to recheck it. Says the Ramah, Kachem divrei Rambam. These are the words of the Rambam. Maskonas haposkim eino kain. However, the conclusion of the poskim is not like this. They disagree with the Rambam. Okay. Now, in each case, the Ramah does not argue that we're going to see 4 cases here in the Shulchan Aruch. The Ramah is not arguing. The Shulchan Aruch is making in each one. The Shulchan Aruch is ein tzorich lachzor v'livdoik. It doesn't need to be checked. The Ramah seems to be choylek. However, the way the MISHNA Berura explains it, he does not argue on each case. There's only 2 of the 4 cases he actually argues on. Okay, so now bearing this in mind, we're going to talk about all 4 cases. What's the halacha in each case? Okay, so first of all, the first case is a case where the Ramah does not argue. Okay, so the first case is okay according to both the Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah. It's okay according to everyone. Why is it okay? Okay, so again, the case is 2 piles, one of chometz, one of matzah. The 2 mice, one took from the chometz pile, one took from the matzah pile. We don't know if the chometz mouse entered into the... so one of the houses has not yet been checked. If the mice entered in the not checked house, that's fine. Anyway, we have to check the house, that's fine. The only problem is if you entered into the checked house. Okay? So here we have a concept called teliyah. Teliyah means that we're happy to... if we're unsure, in a case of a d'Rabbanan, in a case where we have something which is only rabbinic, okay, we have a rabbinic case, and we can blame it. We can blame something on the person who it doesn't bother him. He anyway has to do something. We can blame it on or he's anyway. If we have in the case of tum and tara, we can blame it on the person who's already tomei, the person who's already impure, right? So if we can blame it on the person that doesn't affect him, then we can do that in rabbinic cases. Right. So here it's rabbinic because we're talking about where he's already done bittul. He's already annulled the chometz. Or if he hasn't yet annulled the chometz, we allow him to annul it now. And if he annuls the chometz now, then the chiyuv, the obligation to check for chometz, we learned last year, is only rabbinic. Right? If he annuls the chometz now, then there's only a rabbinic obligation to check for chometz, and therefore, seeing as it's rabbinic, one house needs to be checked anyway. So we'll blame it on that house. We'll assume that the chometz mouse entered into the chometz house, and therefore the house that's already been checked does not need to recheck. Okay. Right. Okay, it's quite late. Have we got time for one more case? Yeah. Okay, let's read one more case. V'chein. So we're now on the 3rd line of the Shulchan Aruch, 2 words from the end of the line, 3 words from the end of the line. V'chein shnei batim. 3rd line, 3 words from the end. V'chein shnei batim v'dukim. Another case of 2 houses. V'tover echad shel chometz. And there's only 1 pile of chometz. Ubo achba v'notan ve'ein yodua le'ezeh bayis. And a mouse came and he took, and we don't know which house he went into. Here we only have 1 pile. Here we only have 1 pile, and it's chometz. 1 pile, 1 mouse. We have 2 houses, but here, both houses have already been checked. Both houses have already been checked. Okay? So in this case, also, the Shulchan Aruch says, Ein tzorich lachzor v'livdoik. You don't have to recheck. The question is why you don't have to recheck. Okay? Why do you not have to recheck? In this case, both houses have already been checked. We can't blame it on someone who, for him, it's who's anyway is in a position where has to recheck because.
And it's definitely chometz.
And it's definitely chometz, right? Okay. It's just we're not sure which house he went into. So in this case, the Shulchan Aruch is mekel. Shulchan Aruch is mekel. The poskim don't really understand why he's mekel, because surely in this topic we should be machmir. Okay, we should be machmir. It's a simple case of a sofek. We don't know which house he went into. And it's in this case that the Ramah, we said the Ramah argues on certain cases. Here the Ramah argues. The Ramah does argue in this case. However, says the MISHNA Berura, even the Ramah who argues, he only argues if both homeowners came to ask at the same time.
Came to ask this question.
They came to ask at the same time. They both came to the door at the same time to ask if they have to recheck the house. However, in the case where they came to ask one after the other, different times, then the first one comes to ask, then we can make it clear. Then we can blame it on the person who's not here.
Right.
Because the other person hasn't come to ask. We don't know who this person is. He's not in front of us.
Right.
He hasn't come to ask a shaila if he should check his house or not. The person who comes to ask, we can say we can rely on the other person. Then when the second person comes to ask, we can do the same thing. We can blame it on the person who asked already. As long as they come to ask at different times, then we can do it clear.
How can you do that if you're the same Rav and you just said, well, we blamed it on you?
Right.
How can you reverse that situation? Seems
right.
a problem.
What's the logic?
Yeah.
With PESACH Year? Because
I mean, it's reminiscent of the 3 pieces of meat, and one of them is
because it's not a clear contradiction between the cases. If they're both in front of us at the same time, if they both come in front of us at the same time, and we have to judge both cases together, we have one case in front of us.
Right.
So we have one case in front of us. We know for sure the mouse came into the house. Right. He for sure came in. Right. So therefore, we can't say don't check, because we know for sure he came into one of the houses.
Right.
So I can't paskin that they don't need to check. They're going to have to check, and there's no reason that anyone should check more than the other one. Therefore, they're both going to have to check.
Right.
Whereas if they come separately, in each case, individual case that comes in front of me, there's only a sofek. There's a doubt if the mouse came in or didn't come in.
Right.
The case in front of me is only a doubt if he came in. Therefore, I can paskin l'chun.
And it's a rabbinic question because bittul is
correct. So rabbinic question because it's after bittul.
Okay.
Right? So it's only if they come and it's the same as one case in front of me, then they definitely came in. Right? Okay, that's the logic. Okay. We have time to finish the shulchan aruch?
Yeah.
Okay, listen, it's going to be difficult. If we stop in the middle, it's going to be difficult to proceed.
Okay.
So let's try and finish this if. The third case.
This is actually reminiscent to me of there's a question of if there's 3 pieces of meat in front of you.
Yes.
Right, and one of them is nevela, and they're
right.
both exactly the same, right? And you're eating with somebody else.
Right.
Right. That we just assume that the other person is eating the nevela.
Right. You know, exactly. These concepts we're talking now, I meant in terms of olah. They come in terms of Yisavaheta, come up in terms of Tumatah. They come up everywhere. Yeah. It's the same concepts again and again.
That's right.
And they're difficult, very difficult concepts to understand exactly how.
And that person assumes you're eating the nevela, and you assume he's eating the nevela.
Right. So we do exactly. So in certain cases, there we say the same thing. Yeah. Exactly. They can't eat it together. The same person can't eat all 3 pieces.
That's right.
However, if there are different people eating them, then each one can follow the way. Exactly. Okay, let's continue. We're now on the 4th line. 4th line, 4 words from the end of the line. Oy sheyoda shenichnas le'echod mehem, v'nichnas achrav uvodak v'lo mota klum. We know that we saw the mouse take chometz. It's only one mouse. He definitely took chometz, and we even saw which house he went into. And I didn't ask a shayla. I went straight away and I rechecked the house, and I didn't find anything. Okay. The question is, what do we do now? He put chometz in the house. I didn't find the chometz. Do I have to check the house again? I just checked it again. Do I have to recheck the house until I find the chometz or not?
Right.
Okay. So in this case, the shulchan aruch is makel, and the Gemara agrees. What's the reason why he's makel? Okay. The reason why we make it is, let's have a look at the MISHNA Berura cotton test. MISHNA Berura cotton test. 9. MISHNA Berura cotton test. We bought that glow multiple. You might think you have to check and recheck the house until a number of times until you actually find it. We rely on the fact that the mouse ate the chometz, And this is in the case even where he wasn't mevatel, even if it's a deraisa here. He wasn't mevatel the chometz. Seeing as I checked the house and I didn't find it, we can assume that the mouse ate it. Okay? Excellent. Let's move on. Let's see the final case. Back to the Shulchan Aruch, when the fifth line now in the middle of the line. Oisha Bodak, we're again talking about the same case, where one mouse took one piece of, definitely took chometz, and he entered the house and we know which house he went into. Right? Oisha Bodak Tzas Me'bayis, and I then checked, I rechecked part of the house, only part of it I rechecked. Umot Tokiko, and I found it. No, I don't need to recheck the rest of the house. Okay, so we saw the mouse take chometz into the house, the mouse or the child, took chometz into the checked house. I checked part of the house and I found the chometz. Can I assume that this is the piece of chometz that the mouse took in?
You had checked previously.
Yes.
And the house is clean.
Correct.
Okay.
Do I have to, can I assume that the piece I found is the same piece that the mouse took in? And therefore I'm done? Or do I have to continue checking the whole house because maybe this is a different piece? Maybe I didn't find. Maybe there's a chiyuv to recheck the entire house.
That assumes that you didn't find this piece in the original search.
Correct.
So this is previous to the mouse bringing in the piece you found.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Could be it's from previously, or maybe someone else bought it without me seeing. The fact that I saw the mouse come into the house with chometz, does that obligate me to recheck the entire house?
Or to check until you find it.
Until I find a piece of chometz. If I find it, if I know for sure it's it, then of course I don't need to check the founder. But is it okay to find until I find a piece, and then I can assume that that's the piece he brought in? That's the question. So again, in this case, the Shulchan Aruch is makel. Okay, the Shulchan Aruch is makel, and the Ramah argues. This is again a case where the Ramah argues. Okay. Now the MISHNA Berura explains the machlokes machaber Ramah here is dependent on whether I've read previously annulled the chometz or not. The Shulchan Aruch was makel even in a case when I haven't annulled the chometz. Even in a case when it's a deraisa, I have not annulled the chometz. It's a deraisa, it's minat Torah, right? Even so, because I found a piece of chometz, we assume it's the piece that the mouse brought in. I don't need to recheck the house.
Right.
Right.
This is the opinion of the Shulchan Aruch.
Correct.
Right.
Whereas the Ramah argues, and the Ramah is only makel in a case where it's a rabbinic case, where I've already annulled the chometz, or I annul it now.
Right.
Then I can rely on, assume that this is the piece of chometz that the mouse brought in. However, if I've not annulled the chometz, then I can't and have to recheck the whole house. We did mention that he can annul it now.
Yeah, that's what.
However, don't forget that we learned last year, it's difficult to remember from a year ago, that one can only annul chometz until midday on Erev Pesach. After midday on Erev Pesach, then one cannot annul chometz, because chometz is not in our reshus, it's not anymore ours. Once chometz is also b'hana'ah, and it's not anymore considered ours, one cannot annul something that's not yours. So annulling chometz can only be done until midday on Erev Pesach. So if this is a case where it's after midday on Erev Pesach, and one didn't annul the chometz, one was supposed to annul it beforehand. So it's after midday and one didn't annul as one was supposed to. We do kol chacham both at night and during the day. He didn't annul the chometz as he was supposed to, and it's after midday. Then according to the Shulchan Aruch, he could rely on the fact that this piece he found is the one that the mouse brought in. According to the Ramah, he would have to recheck and continue and recheck the entire house.
And what would he do with the piece he found? He would flush it, I guess, or destroy it in some way.
He would have to destroy it in some way. Correct.
Right.
Okay. Fine.
That's it.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
Oh.